Hey folks, I'm Arash. Welcome to Game Narrative 101. You've read the title and I'd like to put the main message in the beginning, so here we go. The vanilla D&D 5e design for some races, or I call them ancestries, like Elves, Dragonborn, or Tieflings, lacks cultural flavor. It feels to me like the player's choice to play any of these ancestries makes no difference in most D&D settings. There's no unique significance to role-playing or meeting an elf, dragonborn, or tiefling, even though they're basically different species. This makes 5e flexible so that any DM or player can do anything with these ancestries, and I love 5e for that flexibility, but there's a price to pay for it. It's stale and boring. Imagine reading a fantasy novel about a city on Earth with actual dragons in it, but the dragons just get up and go to work every day. That's a boring story. Well, actually, it sounds kind of cool, but you get my point. We have no idea who these ancestries are as people. That's not evocative design. The hobbits in Lord of the Rings are distinctly different characters, but they're also instantly recognizable as hobbits. They express and radiate their culture every time they speak. Same with elves and dwarfs and humans. That's good design. We want the different species in our game to be unique, and we want enough room in there for individual character nuances. Here's my solution. Too much flexibility makes things less interesting, so restrict the design a little bit. Don't be afraid to make bold statements about different ancestries having distinct societal features. Go above and beyond. Give them their own mores and folkways, values and vices, towns and settlements, and their own goals. Make them feel different. This is going to help you create cultures that stand out instead of just mesh together in a clump. Now, let me explain myself. I never liked playing elves or tieflings or dragonborn when I played D&D. I always ended up playing very rare, unique ancestries like Warforged in a setting where there are none, or a Raven Aarakocra in Chult where the Aarakocra are tropically colorful. Recently, in the process of homebrewing my setting and campaign, I found out why. It's because my choice to play an elf, tiefling, or dragonborn has no consequences. It doesn't help me roleplay, it doesn't set me apart, it doesn't define my place in the world even a little bit. Playing weird, unique stuff instantly sets me apart and gives me an understanding of my character as a member of a bigger unit. The Warforged, for example, is all about identity crisis. She has endless questions. Who made me? Am I alive? Where do I come from? Are there others like me? She's always looking for answers to these questions. The Raven Aarakocra, on the other hand, is all about being isolated and cast out. He's literally the black sheep of the family and is treated like a living, breathing bad omen. So he is drawn into himself. He doesn't talk much. He acts like he believes he's a bad omen. He even takes on the name Omen. Now, to understand what a player, let's say a new player or a new DM, sees when they read the player's handbook, let's look at the section of player's handbook where we read about elves, dragonborn, or tieflings. First up, elves. Okay, key information here is that elves are magical people, they are of otherworldly grace, they live in places of ethereal beauty, sometimes in forests, sometimes in silvery spires, and they love nature and magic, art and artistry, music and poetry, and the good things of the world. That's weird. Look, this gives us an aesthetic so that we can stick it in our game and change it however we want. So this is the good part. 5e is good for that. It's flexible, but it needs the homebrew touch to not be so boring. Like, I got nothing from this paragraph. What are elves like? How do they expect their leaders to behave? What moral stories do they tell their children? What behavior do they hate? What offends them? These are the kind of stuff that defines and identify a people, not loving the good things of the world. And we see the same thing in other ancestries and other official D&D books as well. Even the ones that are specific settings and could focus on cultures. For example, in Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, we get this description of elves of Ravnica. So this is certainly a better description. It tells us who the elves agree and side with in Ravnica and a little bit of the reason behind that, but it stops there. Notice that the only thing setting elves apart from other ancestries is a vague and general tendency towards things such as magic or nature. That doesn't really set them apart. Also, they're associated with growth and stability. What does that even mean? And here's a description of the different ancestries in Saltmarsh, including elves in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. Give it a read. Did you catch it? Here it is. Elves draw no special notice. 5 words. That's it. Definitely not enough. But to be fair, it does say that wood elves live in Silverstand, so let's look at that part of the book, see if we can find more info. Here it is. Well, this one tells us that the Wood Elves pretty much own the forest and know everything, and that they have some military goals, but nothing else. Again, missed opportunity. This is a specific setting. It doesn't need to be flexible, it needs to be cool. Anyway, here's what I did for my elves to fix this. First, they're nature folk. They live in tribes or villages in nature. They remember a time when humans lived in little villages, so they hate that civilization is encroaching on nature so much. They don't like to be in cities in general. Second, they have an ancient rivalry with orcs. Elves and orcs are both nature folk, but elves always aim to preserve nature and bend their will and ways to it, while orcs use nature with no apprehension. Now this might seem trivial, but it reveals a lot about elves. Now we know some of their mores and folkways, some of the stuff they deeply value and stuff they hate. Now it means something to be or meet an elf. Now you, as an elf, have things to talk about. Notice also that this homebrew doesn't make every single elf act a certain way, even though it's a little bit more restrictive. You can still have all sorts of different characters. I just added a cultural backdrop. You can have elves that are for it, against it, or don't care about it, but the backdrop is always there. So elves often end up talking about this backdrop, but what they say and how is up to their characters. So just by introducing a little flavor to elves, my players are gonna feel like they met elves or that they have an elf in their party. Because elves have this thing about being nature folk and wanting to preserve it, and no one else has that. Alright, next up, Dragonborn. Here it is in the player's handbook. All we find here is that they come from dragons, other people are scared of them, some of them serve dragons, some are soldiers, and some of them walk around. This is all we find out about dragon people. You can be a dragon person and all you're going to find about them in the core book is that he can walk around or be a soldier. It pains me that D&D took such a cool fantasy and offered such a boring interpretation of it. I ended up redesigning the Dragonborn top to bottom for my homebrew. So first of all, they're quadrupedal and have functioning wings. So a Dragonborn is actually like a dragon person. They can also use their tails to balance themselves on their hind legs and fight with their hands. Alright, now, if you're one of my players, mute the video, unmute when the spoiler sign goes away. So the main thing here is that Dragonborn roam around in small bands looking for dragons to serve because they each hope to get the dragon's blessing and become a dragon. That's how dragons are made in my world. How epic is that? How much cooler would it be to play this type of Dragonborn and maybe become a dragon in the course of the campaign instead of just dealing 5d6 damage with your breath weapon? How cool would it be to see or participate in the ancient rite of ascension and witness the birth of a dragon? How dramatic would it be to have to keep that from happening? Also, as a people, they have a goal now. Again, this becomes the backdrop that's always going to be there. They're connected to these epic things, the dragons, and no other ancestry has this goal or could have it. Alright, Tieflings, Player's Handbook. TLDR, congratulations, someone made a pact with the devil and now everyone's racist towards you. So first of all, fantasy racism around the table gets old or uncomfortable real quick if you even do it in the first place. Second, if you do not do it, then there's literally nothing left in this description. None. Zilch. So here's what I did in my homebrew. Didn't even change them that much, by the way. Spoilers for my campaign again. Okay, there's no population of Tieflings in the continent the players are in. Just one group of like 6 families who are refugees from another continent. They had to run away because the empire there attacked their settlements, and now the players have the chance to help them along as they travel through the continent looking for another Tiefling settlement to join. They do not enter cities and are surviving in the wild. See, this way I preserve the distrust everyone has towards Tieflings, and I don't have to overplay the hate because they don't interact with a whole bunch of people anyway. Also, it means something to be or meet a Tiefling now. They have a place in the world that informs all roleplay involving Tieflings instead of just, hey, purple person everyone hates for no good reason. Now they have a goal and recent history that acts as, well, you guessed it, a backdrop. And this is a backdrop that no other ancestry has or could have. No one has their special place in the world. Alright, that's it. I'm sure you can do better with these and other ancestries and make cooler homebrew decisions. Remember, add the cultural backdrop by asking what this ancestry believes, values, hates, wants, or needs in your setting. And in this context, do what Matt Colville always says. Find something you think is cool and put it in your game. That's it for me. Hope you liked this video. Until I see you here again, stay healthy and happy. Goodbye.